Welcome back to the Hot Mess to Awesomeness podcast, a show all about inspiring smart, busy women to put their happiness at the top of their to-do list. Join your host and life coach, Dion Thompson, as she chats with amazing women who have figured out how to make their happiness a priority, and more importantly, what it's really like to go from hot mess to awesomeness. And now, on with the show.
Welcome everyone to the Hot Mess to Awesomeness podcast. I am your host and life coach, Dion Thompson. And okay, again, I know I say this every time. That dance party was amazing. I needed it so badly. So we are recording this. I don't even know what day it is. It doesn't matter. The point is, I've had a crappy week. And we were talking before we went online about awareness and using sort of that your tools and shifting your energy and all that awesome stuff. And you know what does it? Fucking dancing. Dancing does it. Dancing is so valuable. And I always get really excited by my guests' song choices. And I've said this before, I will say it again. It's because it's like a little insight into your soul. I don't know if you know that. And so when I'm talking to like the audience and to you at the same time, but Michelle, when you and I met sort of digitally, I had this I was just enamored and really in awe of the work that you do, because I'm really interested in embodiment work. I'm interested in that connection of body, mind, and soul. And I know that through all of the modalities that you work with, that's a really big part. So I found it fascinating that all three of your songs have the word feel in them, in the title. And I was like, so it's going to be a feeler conversation. I'm very excited about that. And I mean, I kind of already knew we were going to go there, but
very exciting.
So good. And just to top it off, that you picked a little MJ for the end, and there's just not enough of that in my dancing life. So if you are listening and you're thinking about being a guest on this podcast, just know if you bring Michael Jackson to the table, I'm going to be really excited.
It's like, what song to choose? So many great songs.
Right?
Yeah.
We had introduced my girls, we play a lot of music around here, and we introduced them to like Smooth Criminal, and they were like, what is he doing? How is he dancing like that? I'm like, you don't even know.
I know, right? It's just, he's this whole other entity of a person, when he's bigger than life, or he was bigger than life.
Right.
So big. Yeah.
So Michelle, thank you for being with me today. And I'm really looking forward to talking about your journey and exploring more in depth this connection between body and mind and spirit, and how you have sort of wielded that knowledge and that sense of knowing to make decisions moving forward. And you and I've had I've had the privilege of chatting with you before, and I'm just so grateful that you're here. So thank you.
Thanks for having me. So it's really great to be here. I feel very fortunate.
Yay.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to share that. It is my absolute pleasure. I would like to share a little bit about your background, because it's, every guest has a unique background. But there's some pieces in here that I don't often see with many of my guests. So Michelle teaches a variety of activities, including martial arts, self-defense, Pilates, Tai Chi, and yoga, and earning the title of sensei, which is the Japanese term for a teaching professional. And thank you for clarifying that. And her 4th degree black belt. Michelle brings discipline and focus to her classes, which, having taken your classes, I can say was felt even through the screen. As a skilled martial artist for more than 25 years, Michelle's knowledge and strong roots in Eastern philosophy, which provides her clients with a solid foundation of movement that connects mind, body, and spirit. Which, and as I had mentioned, is very apparent for those of us on the other side who get to know you and to learn more about what you do. So thank you, Michelle, for bringing your wisdom and your hot mess to awesomeness journey to the podcast today.
Well, again, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure. I've been listening to your podcast to be a part of your tribe of great women that you routinely invite us to get to know, and I love it. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So Michelle, I know that, there's a lot of hot mess going on in the world, and that being said, I'm really interested in talking a little bit more about, you've gone through some transitions recently, but I know that part of it started much earlier than that.
Mm-hmm.
And so walk us through what transpired for you that created this huge shift. And I recognize that it was geographical as well as internal. So let us in on that snippet of your story.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I have a martial arts school for about 25 years with my my then husband, and in 2015, late 2015, early 2016, we decided to separate. And one of the most important things that we talked about, it was an amicable split, was keeping our school going strongly. And it became the most important thing to me at that time, because our children were teenagers, and we wanted to create, that sense of safety, as you mentioned, because martial arts, I think, can be scary for some people. They think of it as, oh, it's fighting and, all that. But really, it is a safe place for kids to come, for adults, for people to come and learn and grow as individuals and create that necessary commitment to themselves as they embark on a self journey. And so that became really important to us, although our relationship was no longer going to be romantic, we weren't going to be partners, husband and wife, we were still partners in our business. And, like in any relationship, as you're growing, you're changing, and sometimes you grow together and sometimes you grow apart. And I decided in 2018 that it was time for me to leave that Mississauga sort of metropolitan area, the GTA, and move north. I felt I was called to move north, and I had met someone, and we had a fantastic relationship, and we decided to buy a house together in Barrie. And it was a great transition, but that meant commuting back and forth every week. And so I was feeling torn. And part of my dream in moving to Barrie was to create my own community here, a space where I could teach from home, teach in my little loft studio that I have. And I was very passionate about the Pilates that I was teaching and working with children and women in particular. So the pull was going on for about a year and a half, and then COVID hit. And I had ironically spoken to a spiritual healer just before all of this was going on. I would say the fall before COVID. And she said something interesting to me. She said that she saw a big change coming, and it was going to happen a lot sooner than I thought. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And I just kind of put it on the back burner. And then when COVID hit, it gave us the opportunity to look at the business that we had and ask ourselves, are we in a position in our lives to make the kind of commitment we need to make for the dojo? We call it a dojo, it means school, martial arts school, to grow and prosper. And am I willing to give that much of myself over to the business? Because as you know, running a business is challenging, let alone going, an hour every day away from your home to do that. And the answer was no. And I felt like I was letting a lot of people down in asserting my own power. And I felt that, it was a really emotional time. It was probably even more emotional for me than it was going through my separation and divorce. Because maybe the impact that it had was, with more people. And so that transition for me became about, okay, you can't think about what other people need. You need to think about you in this particular moment and what you need to do for you. And I started to realize that I had always been putting everyone else ahead of my own needs. Okay, what do you need? What do you need? You got that. Okay, now it's time for me, as many women do. And so then, the COVID was a blessing for me in disguise, although at first it was very challenging because I was grieving the loss of, something we had built up for many years. But sometimes letting go of that is freeing. And I was eventually able to come to terms with it and feel a freedom from not having that sort of looming over my head all the time. And then I developed a lovely community of women that I work with. I'm still teaching martial arts online. I'm still offering courses. And so I still have that connection to my roots, but I'm doing it on my terms now. And so, the community that I have feels much more me, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm not compromising my values for the greater, good of everyone else. I'm doing what really feels good for me and what resonates with me. So that's a little bit about where I came from.
Thank you for sharing that, and for acknowledging there's some core struggles that many, busy all the things women can get sort of sucked into, and we don't even realize how much it is, I won't say consuming, but is part of our lives. And it just is, right? When you said, what do you need? I'm like, oh, like that's a daily thing. Even if it's not out loud, I look at the people in my world and go, okay, they need this and they need this and they need this. I'm going to do this. And you know what, to prevent that from happening, I'm going to do this, 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 and this. And then it's like, okay, I'm going to go get that tea that's been warmed up 6 times. Right. So
Yeah, exactly.
So, and Christine, if you're listening, it still tastes good. Okay, so Christine's my tea dealer. And there's a lot of shifting that needs to occur to get from that very almost unconscious behavior space of like, take care of, manage, do. And especially having a business where growth and potential of other people was part of the success plan.
Mm-hmm.
It then just continues along that, well, how is everyone doing? Is everyone progressing? Does everyone have what they need? Right? That's part of the business plan, not just, your everyday life experience. So I'm interested in what you felt was the most challenging in that transition. And I recognize that, a lot of the stuff with COVID, it was just like, you need to pivot, you need to sort this out.
Yeah.
So there's that, but what would you say was some of the biggest challenges for you to make yourself a priority?
Yeah, that was a huge thing. I mean, we went from, I had a staff of, 10 people to we literally cannot open. The government is telling us, no, you can't open, to saying, you guys are all laid off.
Right.
And, we all have to like figure our own stuff out. And there were some angry people, and I think that was hard for me. There were some people that really, they got it. They understood that it was beyond our control. And there was some angry people that they had their opinions about what they think we should do. And it would shift me because I would literally feel it in my body. I would feel it in my chest, almost like this pressure that was sitting on my chest because someone else thought, oh, I should do this. And then there's that part, well, should I do it? Should I? So the hardest piece for me was actually reining myself in each time and saying, no, stay true to what you want to do. And there was this, sort of pull back and forth for a little while where I just kept getting sucked into, somebody else wants me to try this or do that. And, I kept having this tennis match going on in my head, like, okay, that feels not good in your body. That. So come back, regroup. And then I would have to say to people, I apologize, but this is it. This is where I'm at. This is my decision. I feel this is the best choice for us, for me, more importantly. And I think that was the hardest thing, was just like this constant need to, at first, entertain other people's ideas of what they thought I should do. And that inner voice that tells you, you got to start listening here, really start listening to your inner wisdom. And a story that kept coming back to me was a story that I heard when I was really early in my training. So I would say late teens, early 20s. And, our sensei told us this story about the universe having a conversation with Buddha. You can use whatever higher power you want in this story. And the universe is having a conversation with Buddha, and the universe says, Buddha, where do you think we should hide the secret to life? And they say, well, let's hide it in the deepest forest, or the bottom of the ocean, or the highest mountain. And then finally they realize, no. Here's what we need to do. We need to hide it inside of them, because they'll never look there. And we're always looking outside of ourselves for the answer, when really the answer is right inside us. And that's what I had to come to terms with. Like, you can say that to people, but you need to start practicing what you preach. And that's what had to happen.
That is a really big deal. And I remember you and I had a chat a while back, and you had mentioned about the, feeling it in something in your chest. And I was reminded in my mind that so many of us, so many women especially, have no idea what that means. And so, the universe and Buddha had it all figured out. And in a sense, we're so conditioned to externalize and seek out answers outside of us that it's just not commonplace for us to be tuning in. Then it becomes something that we need to relearn, something that we know as young beings, and then it's taught out of us, and then we re-engage with that learning. And even for someone like yourself who has that knowledge, right? I can tell other people to do it all the time, but you have to be willing to practice, because it's a knowing, right? It's a feeling. It isn't something you can just academically be the genius about.
Right. So true.
And so how did that play out for you? Because again, you have the logic mind knowledge as someone who, with all of your experience with martial arts and the connection to your body. What was it like to sort of circumvent those social norms of thou shalt please all the people, with that knowing? What was that process like for you?
Well, I made a decision to, I had attended your 100 Women on Fire. And yeah, and it was life altering for me, because it made me very aware of the fact that, women in general go through what I went through, and I wasn't alone. And the feeling that I wasn't alone was huge for me. And hearing how other people handled those types of things that came up, I decided to put everything on pause and do the Artist's Way. So I did the Artist's Way book, and that I committed to myself to doing the morning pages every day was the best freaking thing that I ever did for me. And I did that book. And I remember in part of the book, it says, when you're doing your tasks, do the ones that you're resistant to, and do the ones that you really like. And then the other ones, hit or miss. And so I was kind of noticing the ones that I was resistant to, and I would work through them and work through that toughness of, looking at yourself. You're basically looking at yourself in the mirror and going, okay, here's this flaw, that flaw, that flaw. And then going, you know what? I love you anyway. I love you. And I was just learning to love myself again. And I know that sounds simplistic, but it's such a huge transformative thing when we stop loving what everybody else thinks about us and love ourselves first. And I had to really go back to that basic concept of loving myself first. And then through that, all of a sudden I was able to develop boundaries a little more naturally. I was able to say, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to do this. And then, people would expect me to behave a certain way. And I think we talked about this in one of our sessions, where when the old me didn't show up, to that meeting, and the new me, they were like, oh, wait a second, I don't like this new, wait a second. And so it's like, it's an ongoing thing, and I think that the universe has just challenged us, if we ask for patience, it's not going to give us patience, it's going to give us the opportunity to practice patience, right?
That is the life lesson. So not just be careful what you ask for, but be open to receiving it in the way in which it's given. And then going, oh, right, so this is what I'm supposed to be doing. That's brilliant. Okay, I just need to pause and say, like, huge shout out to Julia Cameron, who is the author of The Artist's Way. The Artist's Way and her teachings has played a huge role in my life as well. Journaling is a non-negotiable for me. And I'm a huge advocate of the three elements of The Artist's Way, which are so the morning pages, which is the journaling, the artist dates, which is the weekly, just go out by yourself and do something that you want to do and learn about or fascinates you, because it's through following your fascinations that you really can start to learn more about who you are on the inside. And then the walks, right? So just that movement, and that movement of self, and that movement of energy, and that shifting of oxygen, even just to be circling through that. And I'm not an expert when it comes to energy flow and chakras and everything like that, but I know it all plays part. So so rah Julia Cameron. So how is that? So you tapped into The Artist's Way and practiced the elements and found some shifts there. And I love that how you said it made boundary setting more easy, or just sort of was a little bit more fluid, and it just happened. Did everybody hear that? Okay, can we just say that for the people in the back, that when you choose to go in and look in that, literal or figurative mirror, and love the parts of you that are yours, and you do the journaling, just do the journaling, boundary setting becomes easier. Yes, please.
Yes.
That's
Absolutely.
a huge deal.
I was just going to say, it was hard at first too, when you talk about the dates, the artist dates, like, you would think that would be easy peasy and exciting. And it was, but I just, at first I was like, wow, this is really challenging to, set that time to go do something for me. I actually had to Google ideas, because, well, we're in a pandemic, right? So there's, a little bit more limitation on what we can do, but I had to Google ideas of fun things to do with myself, Now don't think, any less of me for that, but I found that I needed some inspiration, and there was plenty out there, because, there are obviously other people who further along the way on their path and have shared some of their journey. So that was really helpful.
I think that's very telling. And it's, I would say, very common, especially starting out on, building a practice of paying attention to stuff that you like. Right? It's interesting. One of the first questions I ask all my clients is, what do you want? And the answer all the time, I don't know. I don't know what I want. And, okay, what would make you happy? That doesn't involve any other human. It's like, I don't know. So it, until we show up to it and are willing to practice it, it's not a habit we have to be like, I know exactly how I will spend an hour a week that's just for me, about me, and when I'm done, I'll feel all lit up. So you're not alone there, by the by.
That's good.
What did you end up doing? May I ask, what are some of the things in a pandemic that you found you were able to do on your artist dates?
Yeah, so I got into painting. I was, and I'm not like painting paintings, like painting my house.
Cool.
And I made this space a little bit more feng shui friendly, although we can't tell right now, but I made, an opportunity to reinvent my space in my loft. And I visited movies that I hadn't seen in a long time. That brought me joy, like Wizard of Oz. when I was able to see my daughter, we had girly dates where we do wine and cheese, and we'd give each other tasks. Okay, you have to find 3 bottles of wine under $10, and we're going to buy the cheese and the crackers, and just have like the little girly dates, and things like that, and lots of walks. I got interested in the trails in my neighborhood and just like seeking them out, and then walks are just such a great way to clear my head. And I had a big birthday this year, so in August I turned 50. So I guess last year, really. And when you hit a milestone birthday, it makes you pause and reflect. And I decided I was going to write a book on movement, and so that's been my little project. And when I say movement, I mean not just moving your body physically, but mentally and spiritually, because I think all of those things are tied together. And I'm sure you see this in your practice, as I do with people that I work with. Sometimes they can be really strong in one area. They're really physical. They do a lot of physical stuff, for example, but they don't really spend any time on their mental blocks, or they don't do anything that resonates with their spirit, like going on those dates or meditating or whatever. And so I came up one day through the feeling creative after morning pages, and I wrote out the layout of the book, and then I just started writing. So I mean, it's so nice to get in touch with your creative side, when it was kind of like deep down, like buried, and I had to like peel off all the layers to get to it.
Yeah. That's amazing. And I want to talk more about the book in a second, but I do want to highlight how you touched on tapping into your creative center, and having to peel away the layers. And I think that's telling, in that your creative center has been a part of you since birth, pre-birth, if you want to go there, that it is an innate sort of birthright to be creative. And from our creative energy comes sort of that life force, that joy factor, all of those pieces, as we're exercising our beings by creating. And creating is anything. Someone I was talking to recently said, yeah, I wrote some stuff out, but it was very professional. I'm like, yeah, but did it exist before you put it on the paper? Because if it didn't, then you created it. And that still taps into that creative center, that sense of self. So that's a really powerful thing. And in my practice as someone who art was a big part of my transformative process, I now really encourage everybody to tap into anything that gets that it's okay to be messy, it's okay to make mistakes, all of that stuff. Sort of, you get that through you. The walking is very helpful. Something like The Artist's Way that has a little bit of structure, so you feel like you kind of are on a path. That's really powerful. And I love that the book presented itself to you, and now you have this opportunity to release it out into the world. So for someone like myself, so I consider myself, mentally and pretty good. Like I feel on point and know some stuff. And my spiritual sense is improving. I'm feeling much more connected, but my body is, I always put it, I say it's part of me, but I always put that part of me sort of last. And it was the thing that I'll do later. I'll fix it later. I will deal with it later. I will write in. It wasn't until very recently that I started to incorporate that third element of myself into more of an everyday experience. And it's still, for me, I look at, if I were to, create a little, a hierarchy of how I address things, it's like, I can do all the things with my brain that I could ever do, and I could be happy just to stay there in my own little world. And the movement, the physical movement, tends to be a little lower on the list. And I recognize that, and the impact of that when I align all three facets and I move through them, right? So it's not that one is better or less than it. That's some hardcore flow right there. And I'm eager to read your book and to embody it, because that's what I got to do. And so tell us a little bit more about how you evolved through these practices, because it sounds to me that there was a lot of personal learning and a lot of personal growth there. And how have you now taken this work and applied it to sort of how you're operating in your world? Like, how is it showing up now?
Well, it's great because it shows up for me pretty daily. And I work with people. I'm fortunate that I'm working in a clinic right now, so I help people with rehabbing their body. And what I find with a lot of people is that there is always an emotional connection to the pain that they're feeling in their body, and that is so interesting to me. And even with my own body, when I was dealing with a lot of the stress that I was going through with the business closing and that sort of thing, my hip was aching. Like, I had this ongoing sort of pain in my hip. It was, it was injured. I'll say I would have said it was injured from my dog pulling me when he saw a squirrel and I wasn't ready. But it should take about 6 weeks for you to heal from an injury like that, if you're doing what you need to do and that sort of thing. But the hip just kept showing up. And when I looked at what emotions are connected to that part of the body, it's grief. It's, there's emotional grief that was connected to that. And so, I don't know if I'm saying things that people are going to go, woo, but
This audience, you're fine. There's all kinds of woo-woo people here. You're good.
I think there's connections in the body and the mind and the spirit, and they send us messages in various ways, and a little ache or pain in the body, it's telling you something, and it could be just because you aren't moving, but it could also be something else. And so this is how I'm seeing things now, and it's bringing me to like a different level of understanding movement, and that it's not just about looking good and being fit. It's really about moving through and working through whatever emotion or challenges mentally that we have. They're going to show up in our body, and for me, that's kind of what I'm seeing when I work with people, but also more importantly, noticing it myself, right? And noticing things that come up in my own body, and not just blaming it on getting older, like okay, yes, I am getting, well, I'm not 20 anymore, but I still believe that that little ache or pain, it's like saying, hello, pay attention to me, you need to do something here. And so being in I guess a profession, if you want to call it that, what I do in martial arts and that sort of thing, it teaches us first and foremost about the self-awareness, self-discipline, all of those things. And then when we understand ourselves, then we can understand other people. And so that's kind of where I'm coming from in my my current journey. I'm looking at myself first, and then from learning about where I'm at, I can then learn how to work with and help other people, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I think that, some of the best teachers, that's the modality that they choose, right? It's the self-awareness and the observing your growth and learning how that happens, so that when you share it out into the world, number one, you can help people identify it much more easily, because not only do you see it, but you can feel it and you can perceive it in your mind. But it allows that the learner to embrace that with a little bit more confidence, knowing that you're coming from that space of experience. So I think that is absolutely brilliant. And I wanted to say, because someone had taught this to me, that pain is actually pay attention in the now. So whenever I hear someone who's talking about pain in relation to emotional components, I'm like, yep, pay attention in the now. Just
Yeah. Yeah, at first it whispers, but then it starts shouting, right?
For me personally, I've recently been experiencing that. It was something that I wasn't really paying attention to, and I too, recognize the connections between what I'm feeling in my body and what I'm feeling in my heart, and maybe what I'm not paying attention to with my mind. So it's such an important conversation to have. And even for those I say of us because in my, you know, before times life, I would have been like, yeah, that's a bunch of hooey. I just didn't see those connection pieces. And now I look and go, you know, these are the kind of conversations I want to have with my children, right? So that they can begin to make these connections at an early age, and enhance their opportunity to stay fully embodied, right? To stay in their body as
Yeah.
young people. You know, I spent most of my young years, you know, I would say all of them, completely disassociated. And it was a thing. It was a tool. It served its purpose. It caused me a lot of grief every month. It was this thing, because the conversations weren't being had. And I think what your experience and your education and your knowledge and wisdom, when that, you know, as that comes together, and what you then are going to produce out to the world is going to be so valuable. I mean, it already is valuable, everything that you're doing. And as you're pulling it all together, it's very powerful, and 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 powerful for not just, you know, women, or not just, you know, people in business, like the every human, you know, we walk around, right? It's ideal that we can make those connections,
Yeah.
to ourselves in the process.
Yeah.
So good.
And, you know, like you're noticing with your children, you know, when you have children, um, you see them grow and develop. And I think that makes us sort of grow with them and that sort of thing. And realizing that, you know, when I was a kid too, what low self-confidence I had. And if I can, you know, empower the younger generation, you know, youth, tweens, teens, and starting as young as, you know, 5 or 6, when we had that gumption and we don't want to lose it, right? You don't want kids to lose it. I think it's so important for children to, you know, not be doubting themselves, and to feel that they can have that voice and speak up for themselves. And that's such a huge thing. And I think that's why, you know, this is a whole other conversation, but, you know, that's why bullying happens, because, you know, we have children who do, they say things, and then we have the other children who don't speak up. And so we have to find that balance, you know, where yes, you can say things, but, you know, watching the way you say it is still important, you know, and still caring about people is important for all of us. But yeah, I mean, I watched my kids grow up, and I was like, man, you guys are so lucky to have this martial arts training at such a young age, you know, like the blessing.
And I think, again, coming back to that, you are relaying this knowledge through you, is in order to make these long-term sustainable shifts, for the next generation, or to ensure that they get what we want them to have, we need to do it first, right? And I'm a huge advocate of, you know, be the person you want your kid to be, right? And when you do that, not only are you modeling, which is great, because that's how kids usually take in most of their information, is by watching other people do it. But energetically, you are shifting the vibration of that whole experience. So no longer is it coming at them just from a do as I say, not as I do, or maybe even not at that level. It's sort of like a wraparound holistic experience, that it just is, is that I speak up. It just is that I self-advocate. It's not even something that I question, because it just is, because this is what we do, right? Super powerful. So I'm excited for everything that you have rolling out over the next little while. And as the book unfolds, I look forward to hearing more about that. I'm very excited because very soon you will be sharing your wisdom with the Awesomeness Academy crew. So for those of us who are in the community, we will get to experience this concept, this idea of that empowerment state, and through self-defense. And I know that when I took that, it was a very like, hey, check this out, self-defense class. I'm like, okay, I again, not the body person, right? So I was like, I don't know if I can do that.
You did really awesome, by the way.
Well, thank you. And I felt and I don't often have that experience of feeling sort of first. I usually do the whole brain thing first. And I just felt, again, so safe and so like, yeah, I can do that. And, because again, your instruction coming sort of through you, not just, I know this, I'm going to tell you. It was very insightful, and I appreciated it so much, which is why I'm just a little extra excited that you will be coming to share that with us in the community. So if you're not already a member of the Awesomeness Academy, hop on that and make that happen, and so that you can jump in on this cool shit masterclass that Michelle is going to be hosting for us.
Super excited.
Other than that, what else is sort of unfolding in your world? What is it how can people connect? And is there a way that people can work with you right now? Because I know that you, again, multiple modalities. So how is that showing up for you?
Yeah, so I'm just starting a spring session of classes. And right now the classes are mobility. I'm doing some toning classes. They're Pilates-based and yoga-based classes. But on the spiritual side, I'm also doing some Tai Chi. I am going to be hosting a free special class for anyone who wants to learn a little bit about martial arts and body awareness. We're going to talk about posture, how to read body language, and some simple techniques that people can try, when they feel unsafe, or listening to that inner wisdom and that sort of thing.
I am so grateful for your time and for your energy, and I'm grateful to be witness to part of your transformation and how that's unfolding for you. It really is very inspiring. And so for those of us who don't have a habit yet of knowing, and I'm holding my chest here, of tuning in to that feeling, that voice, then I highly recommend that you connect with Michelle. As when I remember we were talking about it, and I'd said, not everybody does that, and you're like, oh yeah, because you just been doing it I've just been doing it for so long, and so to learn from someone who has that awareness now of how well that it's become part of your everyday, beyond the work component. Anyway, I'm just so grateful. If there was one thing that you wanted everyone to walk away with today, what would that be?
I think the one thing that really stands out in my mind is, listening to our own inner voice more, and, taking the time to quiet your mind and go inside and ask yourself, Dion, Michelle, whatever, Christine, whatever your name is, I love you. Tell me what you need, and that was such a hard thing for me to really understand. And now that I understand it, I think it's gold. I think it's priceless, really, because, no one can take care of us better than ourselves. And if people can learn from, us talking about it today, that, they are the most important person in their lives, because without me doing the best that I can't give to other people in my life. Absolutely. And so the same goes for them, right? And so I think that would be my one big takeaway that I hope people have from this podcast.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And we'll see everyone soon in the Awesomeness Academy so that we can check out Michelle's masterclass.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. You too.
Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the show. Join Dion again next week to learn more about what you can do to go from hot mess to awesomeness.